Picking the right early round running backs is the best way to take over your fantasy league. Boomers know this. Gen Zs know it. Hit on your running backs and you will be at a huge advantage. So today I'm going to break down the best way that you can select your early round running backs, how best to select the profiles you go after. But let's start with outlining why we want to hit so badly on early round running backs and the concept of value over replacement, VORP for short. How much more valuable is your running back than your league mates' running backs? You can pick up random RB2 production on the waiver wire during the redraft season, but high value over replacement players cannot be replicated. Guys like Saquon Barkley last year, Jahmyr Gibbs last year, Bijan Robinson last year, and Derrick Henry last year were the highest value over replacement running backs. Then you also had solid value over replacement running backs like Josh Jacobs, Devon Achane, Kyron Williams, and Alvin Kamara. Then you have guys that are a little bit more replaceable, but if they were drafted early, they probably disappointed. Breece Hall, JT, Rashad White, Kenneth Walker, Joe Mixon. But if you have a middling value over replacement and you were drafted, say, late, like a Chuba Hubbard or a Chase Brown or a James Conner, Bucky Irving, Rico Dowdle, J.K. Dobbins, or Tyrone Tracy, then you can deal with that middling value over replacement number, but you didn't spend a high investment to get it like you did for Breece Hall, for example. So this is why we want to be hyper scrutinizing running backs in the early rounds. You guys know that we don't generally love drafting running backs early, but I will say things are changing around here. Hitting on running backs is extremely valuable because of how many guys were winning people leagues. Like I said, Barkley, Gibbs, Bijan, Henry, some of those guys. Missing is equally as debilitating as hitting can be profitable, so we want to be making sure that we're taking the best swings we can. Injury rates last year were actually down as well. Only 2.25 average games missed from the top 20 running backs off the board in ADP, so about the guys that were going in the top 5 or 6 rounds or so. And the serious injury chance was only 3 guys missing 6 or more games. That was Kenneth Walker, Christian McCaffrey, and Isaiah Pacheco. 65% of the running back position also played 16 or 17 games, which is an insanely high number. Usually we see most of the running backs, I would say at least 50% of them, miss 2, 3, 4 games because the running back position takes such a beating. So the fact that we ran that pure last year in 2024 fantasy was really that running back renaissance everybody's talking about. It was truly remarkable. The injury rates were down. Guys that were hitting out of the dead zone were up. Everything went well for the running back position last year. And I'll talk about whether or not I think that's going to continue. Let's talk about the types of early round running backs, because obviously you guys want to know what exactly you are going after, what types of running backs you should be targeting, which ones you should be fading. We are going to classify 3 different types of running backs and determine which archetype accomplishes the goals that you're looking for. Ideally, you want to win your league. You want to draft a running back that crushes, but some people also want to just make sure they don't miss on their early round running back. Some people want to avoid injuries, so on and so forth. So what I've done is I've gone back 10 years, 2015. Since 2015, there's been 20 running backs in every season, 200 running backs total over 10 NFL seasons. And I've archetyped each of the running backs going in the top 20, one of 3 things. Either they're a breakout candidate, meaning they're year 3 or younger, and they have not finished as an RB1 in fantasy before. You can think of guys that are rookie running backs like Ashton Genty this year, but also guys like Bucky Irving, who's a second-year running back who did not finish as an RB1 in his rookie season. You also have trusty veterans, and I actually changed this from last year. It was year 6 or 26-year-old running backs, but I did actually bump that up to year 7 and 27-year-old running backs, mainly due to the age and touch apex studies that I do. Usually running backs start to fall off at around age 27, and it also helped flatten out the hit rates a little bit. So trusty veterans, you're a guy that's been in the league for a long time. Maybe you've been very productive. Maybe you haven't. Either way, you're in year 7 plus of your career, meaning you were drafted in 2018 or earlier, and you're 27 plus years old. Running backs in their prime, under the age of 27, but have already had an RB1 finish already. So you could be a rookie running back last year who had an RB1 finish, and you're an RB1 in their prime already in your second year, even despite being 22 years old or whatever. Like, for example, the breakout candidates, the reason Bijan, Gibbs, Devon Achane are not breakout candidates, even though they're in year 3 or younger, is because they've already finished as RB1s in fantasy before. So that is how we're going to archetype these running backs. We're going to look through the hit rates, who are the types of archetypes we were going after. So if we take a look at last year's top 20, you can see that I gave their season a bucket, whether it was they got injured, meaning they missed 6 or more games. They busted, meaning they lost 10 or more spots of ADP from where they were drafted. Returned on ADP, meaning they basically returned on where they were drafted. And if they were drafted top 5, all they had to do was finish top 5 to get there. And then also they were just fine. And just fine essentially just means that if they were drafted RB 6, let's say, and they finished RB10, they didn't kill you, but they didn't crush either. And Kyron Williams was a really good example of that. He was drafted RB6 by a lot of people and finished as the RB10. He didn't kill you, but you probably didn't win your league because of Kyron Williams either. And those are all the like ranges of outcomes that players could have. And the other one that we really want to pay attention to is boom. And the players that have their names in purple text is the guys that either had an 18 plus fantasy point per game season, or they returned at least 10 or more spots of ADP. So they needed to really, really crush their ADP to be able to be considered a boom. A guy who just returned on ADP only gained 1 to 9 spots of ADP as opposed to 10 plus. And you can see we had a couple boom seasons last year from Bijan, from Gibbs, from Barkley, from Henry, and then from Kamara, who also, in addition to finishing 10 spots higher than he was drafted, also actually reached 18 PPR points per game as well. So that is what happened last year. And I did this basically for every year since 2015, giving you guys an idea of the player archetypes we want to go after. Dissecting the top 200 running backs since 2015, you see breakout candidates, trusty veterans, running backs in their prime, all bucketed by what they all did in those respective seasons. And then on the far right column, you have the all running backs, which if you add the returned on ADP, get injured rate, bust rate, and fine rate, they would all equal 100%. Boom rate is not included in that because if somebody boomed, they also returned on ADP, so that's included within that bucket. This gives you guys a good idea, though, and outlines the picture that, A, running backs miss a lot. You could see that if you combine the bust rate of 20%, the got injured rate of 18%, and the just fine rate, which didn't kill you but wasn't really helpful, of 20.5%, you got nearly 6 out of every 10 running backs not hitting in fantasy football when you draft them. About 3 to 4 guys out of the top 20 are going to suffer 6-game plus injuries. 4 out of the 20 running backs are probably going to bust. 4 or 5 of them are going to be just fine every year. And your goal essentially is to figure out the 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or maybe 9 or 10 running backs that really do hit big for you. Depending on what your goals are in the early rounds, mine are typically to draft league-winning running backs. I don't like drafting running backs who are just going to get me by while the rest of my team does its damage, because I want to get those value over replacement running backs that help me single-handedly win my league. It's not easy to win a fantasy football league. You got to beat 11 other people, 9 other people if you're in a 10-man league. Your goal in round 1 to 5, when the top 20 running backs of ADP are going off the board, is to pick the archetypes who hit. So that's what my goal is, which means I'm heading towards the guys who return on ADP and the guys who boom at the highest rate, which would be a combination of the breakout candidates return on ADP the most, the running backs in their prime return on ADP plus boom at the highest rate. So if you're trying to draft a hit like me, running backs in their prime, RB1s in their prime definitely fit the description there. If you're trying to avoid injury, you don't want to be screwed by injury for the 3rd straight year or whatever, breakout candidates are your safest bet because they're young running backs, not a lot of touches under their belt. If you guys, and I don't advise this, are trying to just get safe, projectable volume, a guy who can be just fine for you, draft him RB7, in worst case scenario, he finishes like RB13 or something, I would highly suggest not drafting like this. But if you do want to do that, trusty veterans are your best bet for that because we have a long history of them being productive. Usually they can carry a big workload. But again, running backs miss so often in the early rounds. Why take the risk for a guy who's just going to be fine for you? And if you guys want an even simplified, more version of this chart, we are looking for crushed, hit, missed. Crushed is essentially just the boom rate. Hit is just the returned on ADP rate. Missed is the bust, injury, and just fine rate combined. And again, you could see that if you are trying to avoid misses, trusty veterans are not your friend. If you are trying to hit big, running backs in their prime are your friend. And if you want a nice combination of both, breakout candidates are a good, happy medium there. So remember that this is just macro advice. We're just archetyping running backs. I'm not necessarily saying that a guy who's on a good offense versus a guy who's on a bad offense or a guy who's more talented than the other wouldn't factor into how you'd actually think about them from fantasy. But I'm just saying we're going to bucket these guys into archetypes and kind of highlight the ones we want to drill down a little bit deeper on. And I'll do that in the next league-winning running back video on Monday. I'll break down the actual micro player takes of all these players. But just remember what archetype they fit under when I do that video, and I will remind you of that on Monday. So just remember as a general rule that only 40% of running backs in the top 20 of ADP, generally speaking, are going to hit every single year. So you really want to be picky with these profiles. Now, going into the 2025 kind of landscape of running backs, This is the top 30 running backs in ADP. Now, again, I want to hone in on the top 20 because that's what part of the sample that we're looking at, but I have archetyped all of them. You see Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, Josh Jacobs, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, and James Conner among the guys in the top 20 are trusted veteran running backs that we maybe want to be a little bit wary of. Then you also have the 9 running back ones in their prime: Bijan, Gibbs, Achane, Taylor, Kyron, James Cook, Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, and Chuba Hubbard. And then we have the 4 breakout candidates: Ashton Jeanty, Bucky Irving, Chase Brown, and Amari and Hampton. Jeanty and Hampton, the rookies, and Chase Brown and Bucky Irving, not quite finishing as RB1s last year, but they were very productive, but they have yet to finish as RB1s, and they are in year 3 or earlier of their career, so they fit the bill for that. The individual cases, like I said, I will cover on a micro level on Monday's video, but basically you are looking at the green running backs and maybe the yellow running backs too as highlighting your targets on a macro level. Bijan, Gibbs, Achane, JT, Kyron, James Cook, Hall, Walker, and Hubbard are the green running backs in their prime. Best archetype of running back that you can go after. Sometimes they get injured, sometimes they don't hit, just like any running back can, but they do have the highest rate of absolutely crushing, and they do also have the second highest rate of returning on ADP. If I had to guess who are the guys that absolutely crush from this territory, it's probably Bijan, Gibbs, and Achane, but you could see a monster season out of JT, Kyron, James Cook, especially Breece Hall, or Kenneth Walker, Chuba Hubbard. Further down the board, you also actually have DeAndre Swift, Isaiah Pacheco, who have had RB1 seasons in the past, who are still under the age of 27. And I would highly suggest you start drafting these guys because they both play for very potentially good offenses as well. And I do think, given that they've been RB1s in the past, they can definitely get back to that production because the best indicator of future fantasy production is actually past fantasy production. A lot of people like to look at, oh, what is his missed tackles force rate and what is all this, nonsense statistical stuff that doesn't actually predict fantasy production any better than past fantasy production does. So if you're taking anything away from this video, DeAndre Swift and Isaiah Pacheco may be on the undervalued side. And Brian Robinson has never actually had an RB1 season, but he is technically an RB in his prime because he is not in year 3 or sooner of his career anymore. He's entering year 4. All 3 of those guys actually in contract seasons as well. So definitely interesting when you look at it. The trusty veterans, like I said, these guys, they disappoint you 65% of the time. So as much as we all love Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, there's a good chance one of them misses. My money would be on Christian McCaffrey of that group, but it could be Henry or Barkley too. Jacobs, Mixon, Kamara, Conner. Statistically, there's a good chance 2 of them miss and maybe even 3 of them miss. So again, we have seen this renaissance of these older running backs, particularly ones that came from the 2017 running back class, and that being Mixon, Kamara, Conner, CMC, and those guys, because that class was so prolific. I just would say that we should remember what the data says. Remember that usually these running backs, by the time they get to year 8, year 9, 28, 29, 30 years old in their career, they start to fall off. Moral of the story is, if you're not sold on a trusty veteran running back, it would be wise to fade him. For example, I am not sold on Joe Mixon this year. I don't like that he's in a boot already. I don't like the Nick Chubb edition for his volume, and I don't like the Woody Marks edition for his volume. So because he's a trusty veteran, I'm probably just going to fade him entirely, fade him altogether. Whereas Kamara, Conner, Barkley, Henry, Jacobs, and CMC, I like their outlooks a lot more, assuming they stay healthy and they don't fall off from a talent perspective. I'm more likely to take the plunge on them as opposed to Mixon, who I don't really like his outlook, even if he does stay healthy, not fall off from a talent perspective. So breakout candidates all over the place. You got Jeanty, you got Bucky, you got Chase, and you got Amari and Hampton, the ones that are in the top 20. Those 2 top-end rookies, Jeanty and Hampton, the first-round picks in the NFL draft, project very well. I mean, you think of the volume they could get, especially with Najee Harris on the NFI list. All of these guys have great individual projections, and I would be heavily drafting them. I am a little bit worried about the price tag for Jeanty, but Hampton specifically is a guy that I'm very, very much targeting at this point in time. And then Bucky Irving and Chase, like I made mention to, they technically did not finish as RB1s last year, but there were stretches of time where they were giving you high-end RB1 production in their young careers already. So you should actually be very, very high on them for that reason. I know it sounds counterintuitive that, okay, they're not technically RB1s in their prime yet, but if you think about it, they're breakout candidates, but they're so much better bets than other breakout candidates because we've already seen them be very, very productive at a high level in fantasy football, and that is the best predictor of future success. Yet, They're still very young and still could get a lot better. And by the way, they play for 2 of the top 10 offenses in the NFL. And Bucky Irving specifically and Chase Brown specifically both have high-end receiving production. So don't overthink those guys. They should absolutely be targets of yours. Mid-round breakout candidates too. These are mainly the other rookies. You see RJ Harvey there, Trevion Henderson there, Caleb Johnson there, and Quinshon Judkins there. They are definitely, when they're not inside the top 20 running backs in ADP, they're a lower hit rate. Mid-round breakout candidates that go around 5, 6, 7, 8 of drafts like these guys are going, they're no sure thing for sure. But when they do hit, they usually do crush their ADP. So definitely be willing to take shots on those rookie running backs as well, particularly the ones that you like the micro case for. I know there's plenty of people out there love the Denver Broncos offense. Go after RJ Harvey if that's you. I'm a little bit worried about J.K. Dobbins and the talent there, but I'm personally targeting Trevion Henderson given his receiving skill set in Drake May's offense. I also like Caleb Johnson in a really run-heavy offense as well. And I love, assuming he actually plays for the Cleveland Browns here, the volume and the athleticism that Quinshon could get, assuming he's back with the team. Be very, very wary of mid-round trusty vets. David Montgomery, Aaron Jones, Tony Pollard. I would bet good money that 2 or 3 of these guys bust, and I would not load up too much on them. Ideally, you're going to be drafting wide receivers, stud quarterback, or tight end talent at that point in time because you already have 2 running backs on your team, maybe even 3 on your team by that point. You don't have to chase your league mates by drafting David Montgomery in round 5 because you didn't get your running backs early. That is the major adjustment that I'm going to be making this year. I do believe that, double hero RB is one of the best strategies you guys can employ. My running back strategy this year, like I just kind of made reference to, is going to be to get my 2, maybe 3 running backs in the first 5-ish rounds, because I do think after the first 20 or so, it does drop off the board to the top, 21 to 30. There's some guys that I like in there, Pacheco, Swift, like I made mention to, some of the rookies, but especially after that RB 30 is off the board, Brian Robinson, we're talking backfield committees, handcuffs, guys that we just don't feel good about at that point in time. So ideally, in the first 20, 30 running backs, and probably in the first 20, you want to have 2, maybe 3 running backs that you feel great about and let your league mates chase the running backs that you don't want to draft in the round 6, 7, 8, 9 round area while you're taking wide receivers, you're taking quarterbacks, and you're taking tight ends at that point in time. You can line your bench with upside guys in the double-digit rounds, Trey Benson, Zach Charbonnet, guys like that. I did 2 4-round mini mock drafts to showcase exactly how this plays out in a draft at the beginning to give you an idea of the structure I like as well. This first one from the 9-hole, grabbed Puka Nacua with my first pick, one of my favorite wide receivers in the first round. Devon Achane, one of my favorite second-round running backs. Grab Marvin Harrison in the 3rd and wrap back around with Amari Hampton. I feel good about both of those running backs being able to lead me. Maybe even in round 5, I would be willing to take an Alvin Kamara or Kenneth Walker if they fell. But generally, I'd probably start hammering out wide receivers, grabbing a quarterback, grabbing a tight end, so on and so forth. And then this other one from the 4 spot, Bijan at the 4-hole, Ladd McConkey in the 2nd round, grab Chase Brown in the 3rd, Devontae Smith in the 4th, and then after that, because Chase Brown and Bijan are so locked into volume, I'd probably start hammering wide receivers more so than I would in the first mock because I had rookie Amari Hampton as my RB2, but I'm definitely feeling comfortable grabbing 2 running backs in the first 3 to 4 rounds this year, unlike the last couple of years where I've said, hey, maybe 0 RB will work for you guys, or maybe hero RB will work for you guys. I want 2 in the first 4 rounds this year. And these 2 starts, like I said, you're going to be hammering wide receivers, deviating for elite tight ends and quarterbacks from the round 5 to 10 area, and even potentially diving into the dead zone for one of those breakout candidate rookies like a Trevion Henderson, Caleb Johnson, hell, even a Pacheco or a DeAndre Swift, like I said. 0, hero, double hero. Those strategy videos will be coming out early next week, so make sure to stay tuned for those. I know this was a valuable video for you guys, and it's valuable to me too, because I'm doing exactly what you guys are watching for. I'm making this content to beat my league mates. I haven't won my home league in a couple of years now after going back-to-back at the first 2 years of this channel, so I need to beat my league mates. I need to shut them up because they're talking about me like I'm, washed level of Ezekiel Elliott in 2025. I need to get out there and win my league this year, and I am on the hunt for it, and I'm hoping you guys are on the hunt for it too. If you guys want everything you need to dominate your drafts this year, head on over to the link in the pinned comment to go to Underdog Fantasy. Start drafting fantasy football teams right now. You can get an edge on your league mates by having 10, 20, 30, as many as you can afford drafts drafts in the bank over on Underdog. And when you sign up, make sure to tell them that we sent you using the promo code FSE. You'll get up to $1,000 in bonus cash on the site to play with. You get a lot of drafts in. You can draft $3 drafts, $5 drafts, $25 Best Ball Mania to turn into $2 million if you can take it down. Get practice for your home league. This is the best time of year to do it. The casuals are starting to come back. The ADP is getting a little bit softer. And again, use the promo code FSE. That is linked down below in the pinned comment. And of course, if you want our draft guide, FSE rankings versus home leagues, all of our positional rankings by tier. We're going to have tons of other stuff coming out in the draft guide, risk ratings, a draft ready cheat sheet, everything you guys are going to need for that. That is available on flockfantasy.com. Use the promo code FSE to sign up. Get 7 days for free, and also get a 30% off coupon when you use our promo code. We will have a season pass coming out in the next couple of days. So if you guys do want to hold off on getting that, you will have an option to get a season pass from August 1st all the way to January 1st. If you are just a casual redraft player, I'm telling you, this is the best thing that you guys can do. And of course, like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed this video. But with that being said, peace out, and I'll talk to you soon.